Thank you, everyone, for staying with us and joining us for the first panel of the afternoon. I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Judith Plummer-Brackman, who is a fellow at the Cambridge Institute for Sustainability and Leadership and has an extensive background in engineering infrastructure projects, with a sustainability angle. I think the panel will be very interesting from as a build-up from the sessions we had in the morning. So, Judith, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm told the mics turn on by magic, and they do, so this is all very clever. Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you had a really good lunch, but not too good a lunch. Okay. Always a problem with the post-lunch session. So I'd like to introduce our panel. We have Florian Stoeger, who's Managing Director of Raymond James Corporate Finance, Rachel Barza from EBRD, John Robinson from Mazarine Climate, and Alex Loucopoulos from Sciens Water. Okay, now, because it isn't immediately obvious from their titles, I'm just going to ask them to do a one-sentence, what's your relationship to water? Rachel.
EBRD is the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, so we are a development bank that invests in infrastructure and private sector projects, including many that relate to water.
My name is Florian Stoeger from Raymond James. Raymond James is an S&P 500 investment bank headquartered in the US. I'm in the division for investment banking M&A, focus on water.
So I'm with Sciens Water. Hopefully people recognize the name from this conference and also from John's speech earlier. We invest in water infrastructure.
Mazarine is a Chicago-based fund group. We have two funds, Mazarine Ventures, Mazarine Climate. We're doing what all venture capitalists do, find early stage companies, participate in them, grow them, and exit them. Across all of our funds, the theme is water-related opportunities.
Okay, thank you very much. So we had a detailed discussion this morning and explored a lot of the sector challenges. The purpose of this session this afternoon is to dive into the financial solutions or even just the financial challenges which go along with that. Florian, I'll ask you to start. So can you give us a sense of the challenges from the perspective of a financier that the high-level water challenges we talked about this morning raise?
Very happy to. I'd like to start from a very high level where we look at the mega themes in the water environment, which is water scarcity, water quality, and aging infrastructure. And within these three mega themes, we can dive deeper into different investment opportunities which fit one investment profile better than the other one. At the end of the day, what is everyone looking for? Getting most money out of the less risky investments. To keep it short, I can talk for hours.
That's fine. Okay, good, thank you. Rachel, so how do those challenges link to the broader agendas of nature and climate?
So to clarify, EBRD has got Europe in the name, but we don't actually invest in the UK or Western Europe. It's not a Brexit thing, it's a mandate thing. We're Eastern Europe, Central Asia, North Africa, and now Sub-Saharan Africa. So we're looking at lower and middle income countries to invest in. And on the waterfront, from an investor perspective, our obligation is to look at the risk profile. Will this investment pay back for us, accounting for the different risks embedded in that? But from a climate perspective, we have to look a bit further. We have agreed to abide by the Paris Agreement commitments. So every investment we make has to be aligned with a climate resilient future. So as an investor, we look at the tenor of the loan. We say, will this pay us back? Is there a risk that it won't because of climate-related risks? But also, as a development bank, we look for the life of the asset into the future. So when we're investing in a water utility or any industrial project or private sector project, we look at the long-term pathway. What's the water balance going to be in 2050, 2080, 2100 under different probable climate futures? So we take an extra step in our due diligence to think about climate adaptation. On the nature front, I think everyone who's done an infrastructure project knows about all of the extensive safeguarding requirements involved in that. But again, as a development bank, we try to go a step beyond and identify opportunities in that space as well. And often those are either voluntary or they are donor funded, because if we think water doesn't pay enough to return the investments that are needed, I have to tell you, nature is possibly even worse. So the UK is really stand out in having a net gain requirement. We are increasingly trying to identify opportunities for voluntary net gains in our work.
Okay, thank you. Alex, as an investor in slightly more middle market, do these challenges resonate with you? Do they flow through to the middle market?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think as we heard this morning and as we've heard, water is a very complicated sector in general. It's even more complicated and fragmented in the middle market. One that is underpinned with a lot of the high-level sort of macro opportunities, right? So where we look at it from the middle market is how do you meld and create something investable and organized. Sorry, not working? No. Sorry about that. So how do you take the large macro trends and turn them into actionable investment opportunities? And that is precisely, I think, what middle market private equity is meant to do, is to help organize these sectors such as water, which is in need of organization, which is in need of education, and which is also in need of funding. So I think it's a perfect blend of taking the macro trends and applying them to investable, actionable opportunities in the middle market.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So, John, you're perhaps at the even smaller end of the market, or the newer end of the market in terms of technology. So, what challenges are you facing in addressing issues like pollution, aging infrastructure, scarcity?
Our challenge as a venture capital fund is finding founders that have a really good vision for where the market's going to be for their product in the market in 3 to 5 years. There's a lot of technology and engineering founders that are really good at product and technology, but when it comes to sort of seeing the future, it becomes a bit of a challenge. So as investors, we talk to 400 or 500 companies a year, and our first question is always, where is this all going? Talk about the market, talk where it's going. It's really hard to find that. So many founders are focused on the product, but 9 times out of 10, the darn thing works. Yeah. Let's talk about 3 to 5 years. Because if you're a startup, you're not really in today's market. You're in the 27, 28, 29 market. So the ability to, we call it time traveling. So our biggest challenge is finding, I know it sounds funny, time travelers who've been to 2028, and they've looked around a little bit, and they come back to 2025, and they're like, this is how everything's going to work in X, Y, or Z water-related space. That's our biggest challenge. But just one other thing that might be helpful, and Alex knows this, is we're, as a checkbook, as an early-stage checkbook, we've reframed water a little bit. Mazarine Climate, which is our new fund, isn't in the water industry. We're in 4 industries that have massive water headaches, and they are linear assets: roads, rails, pipelines. They go on for hundreds of miles. Every mile is a different risk profile. And if you talk to guys who own or operate roads, rails, or pipelines, guess what the biggest headache is? Landslides, rock slides, mudslides, flooding. If you own a pipeline, like, water is the headache. So leveraging technology to help you see and understand risk, water-related risk in your linear asset. We're looking for founders and startups that are able to bring that visibility. The second area we're really bullish on is coastal infrastructure, specifically ports, harbors, and marinas. Again, if you own a port harbor, you're not in the water industry. But guess what your biggest headache is? Sea level rise, storm surges, water, risk. The third area we're very bullish on is finance, insurance, and real estate. Again, I mean, insurance company, they're not in the water industry. They don't go to WEFTEC, they don't go to AWI, they don't go to, but if you talk to people in insurance, the #1 headache is water. Too much of it, actually. And then last but certainly not least, our area of focus is power gen. So specifically hydropower. And people are like, well, what does hydropower have to do with water? The whole business is water. And snowpack in the mountains that melts in the spring generates power. And then thermoelectric power, if you know anybody who works in gas, coal, or nuclear, the whole business is cooling, which is a business of water. So as a fund, we've deliberately distanced ourselves from the water industry and put ourselves into other industries that have water headaches, and founders that are able to see and understand where and how their tech can help those owners, operators manage that risk. And that's how we realize our fund performance goals.
Is that rethinking water?
Reimagining, actually. Not to get into
Reframing,
semantics. So the challenge is that we're operating in other industries
Yes.
where they're not water experts.
No.
They own a rail line, and like a flood of a little tributary now is like a river, and like if there's a flood over a rail, like it's a health risk and a security risk. But they're not water guys, so you kind of have to educate them, which means we have to invest in companies that have tools that help them manage that risk. And that's how our first deal is a company that is focused on moisture in roads. TDRI, they're in New Zealand. They're using something called reflectometry to understand how much water's in the road. And everybody in this room knows the enemy of roads is water. Freeze thaw, it's potholes and all kinds of problems with roads. If you can see moisture in a road with better visibility, you can understand maintenance and public health safety. So it's clearly not the water industry, but it's the road guys having water headaches. And technology helps them see and understand and manage that risk.
Yeah. And there's a great link there to the water issues of water runoff off roads. You know,
Pollution.
you can take everything one step further, you'll get back to the water industry.
Yeah.
But maybe
Yeah.
what is interesting, what John just mentioned is two things. Risk, we all agree on, very important for investing, and the future. When we look at why more and more investors, from very small to very big, are looking into the water sector is because these investors, they need a crystal ball. Why? Because it's all about investing today, selling tomorrow. Tomorrow, you guys tell me if I'm wrong, but 5 to 7 years holding period. Trying shorter to get more return, especially on the IRR. But you need the crystal ball.
Yeah.
So is my investment today a good investment in 5 years, especially from a macro perspective? There are multiple examples where we look today, like 5 years ago, should I have invested into that industry? I don't want to name any industry, not to offend anyone, but you could come up with some examples. I haven't found someone yet telling me that water in 5, 10, 20 years will be worth less. So from a risk perspective, water is a perfect environment to reduce the risk level and having mega themes that are supporting the increase of importance. Right? So that's the reason why we see dedicated funds. We're all talking about sustainability, about impact, about ESG, by the way, different topics, right? We're all talking about things like greenwashing. People claim to invest sustainable, but they are not. I've never seen in a single IC that questions, is water really green? So it's a really safe haven for impactful investment, getting on the right side of the investment community, and getting good returns. Now the question is, water is not water. We have several examples of different buckets. I mentioned the 3 mega themes, right? Now we have talked about PFAS, water treatment. We have talked about water reuse, zero liquid discharge, by the way, a false term. We can talk about underground infrastructure maintenance, 40 years of sewer systems that are breaking down, leak detection, stuff like that. So there are a lot of buckets where we can see very nice, good returns, growing markets, with a very risk-reduced profile. That's the reason why, in my opinion, we see more and more attention to it. Having said that, we have a scarcity of opportunities. These guys are fighting over the water opportunities. We made an analysis that about 5% of all water companies are in this mid-market space, defined as 5 million EBITDA up to 50 million EBITDA. Only 5%. There are a lot of small companies, unfortunately, they're dying quicker than we can see, and there are a few very big ones. Now the question is, why are the small ones dying? Do we help them enough? Do we give them enough opportunities? Do we invest enough into them? Up for discussion.
Yeah. And so many of those investments could quite easily be rebranded as climate mitigation or adaptation projects.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or both, in many cases.
Yes.
I think a lot of people really we need to recognize the embedded energy in water. It's been talked about in the financials that water is free, but it requires the infrastructure to extract it, pump it, transport it. And every drop leaked is essentially carbon that is wasted because it's not getting to where it's gone. It's meant to go, and it's both saving water and saving energy.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So, Florian, I'll come back to you. So, there are the challenges.
Yes.
Okay. What do we do about it? What are your investors really interested in?
So the investors are really interested in making money
Yeah.
at the end of the day, right? Everyone is.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to see the person who doesn't like money. But what you need to do is to find pockets where the risk profile matches the return profile. As I mentioned, there are different buckets from the macro theme. You can dive deeper into those. In the end of the day, there are size buckets from seed funding, angel funding, up to middle market to the bulge brackets. The different stages also have different drivers of, is it important to grow more? Is it important to have a better margin profile? Is it more for an infrastructure fund investor? Is it more of a risk profile? We see different types of focus on, is it good to great? Is it a value-creating investor? An example would be we have supported Aurelius this year to acquire the carve-out from Xylem International Census business, which is, we talked about this today, water smart meter. Yeah? So they acquired that for a good multiple. Having said that, under certain circumstances, if the financial advisor is telling you, look, the EBITDA number for LTM, I can't tell you because I have 6 different numbers and I don't know which one is the right one, that's a high risk for an investor, right? So the entry multiple needs to get reduced. But at the exit, they want obviously to see the double-digit multiples we have seen around noon in the 14, 15, maybe even 20 times EBITDA. Yeah? So that can be a very good investment. But you could ask, why is Xylem selling it? Right? So I think you need more people that are specializing into that environment. You need to be more into the trenches versus just looking for the quick money, because that doesn't work in the water space. And yeah, the water industry is conservative. Yeah. I mean, and we all heard it this morning, and wastewater treatment operator, he has one objective: keep the system running. Right? So if you approach him and say, hey, I have a new technology, 10% faster, 10% more efficient. It's like, great. Is it worth the risk of shutting down my plant? No. So,
if I could just add to that, I think you're spot on about, I think the opportunity is massive. I think we've discussed that this morning. I think there's no debate about it. The question is, where is the opportunity? And the opportunity, I think, as you pointed out, is in the lower middle market, right? Because there aren't that many companies that exist in that space. And in order to do that, yes, you need to manage the risk-reward profile, but also the duration, right? Which is a problem that sort of you certainly face on the venture side and you face on this side. And the key is, how do you truncate that duration? Because we see a lot of investments in the water space take 10, 20 years because the macro is there. That's undeniable. The question is, how do you make money in a shorter duration? And that's where the expertise comes into play. That's where the focus comes into play. And that's where the organization and also rethinking or reframing comes into play, which I think is what John does with his fund, which is not your classic water VC, I'm going to create something and then in 10, 20 years it's going to be there, right? You have to really figure out ways to rethink it, and you have to figure out ways to truncate that duration. Otherwise, the opportunity is really something that is just 30,000 feet in the air and not grounded. But fundamentally, I think, to echo your point, you need the expertise, you need to be grounded in the water education, and you need to figure out what is your differentiating factor in the duration to really become successful in water.
And
I think we see it a lot with new money coming into water, and their thesis is usually something like water is life. Water's everything. Water's the most precious resource. Factual.
Yeah.
Factual, I agree, but it's, as far as we're concerned, like, it's a shit thesis. It really is hard to, it's like saying honesty is important. Yeah, honesty is important. Water's life, yeah. Like, what are you gonna do about it? Like, people need more honesty. Yeah, it really, so we've just gone the other direction. Like, water is a risk, water's a problem, water's a headache. But that doesn't play well in corporate and NGO world, where water's life just sounds a lot better. So, but every investor is entitled to their own thesis and own strategy, but like our thesis is maybe more gloomy, and which takes us over to the too much water problem. Water's life, but if you have a wall of water coming at you, actually water's death. Yeah. It's the antagonist, not the, water's the protagonist, it's the giver of life. It's actually the taker of life as well. You talk to farmers, water will take you down. So I disagree with you on one thing. So an operator of a drinking water utility's number one goal is not keep the thing going, it's stay out of the newspaper. Which if the pump dries up and you don't have any water, you will be in the paper, but one of our portfolio company's founders, who's way smarter than I am in the space, says top priority, don't get fired for a drinking water utility. Number two, time. I miss my daughter's volleyball game and I have to go do all these things. Bottom priority, customer satisfaction. I hate to say this in this context, but like operators wake up in the morning and the goal number one is don't get fired. Water quality is how you end up in the paper, boil alerts, and if the pump goes down, we have nothing to sell. Other things like leaks and other kind of stuff, it's like I don't think you get fired from that stuff. But certainly if it's a boil alert, you're in trouble. So I think it's like the job security is job number one for a drinking water utility operator.
Which is the result, absolutely agree. Just to switch a little bit gears into another example, because we talked about it a lot, IoT, data, hardware, sensors, meters, right? We're talking about this IoT and technology in the water environment a lot, but we are swimming at a very high level. The question is, because we are sitting here to discuss what is really a good idea to invest into, right? So everyone agrees, yeah, we need more data, we need more sensors, more hardware to generate the data. That's a theme that we're hearing now for years. Yeah. What the startups figured out is that we can put some sensors in, generate the data, but you know what? Monetizing on the data is super tough. Why? Because the hardware is generating noise, a lot of flawed data. So these days, all the investors, all the big guys, they're looking for data analytics. It's not that easy that you come up with a nice sensor, a smart meter, and say, you know what, deploy that meter, I'm saving the world. We passed that level. So the water environment is getting really sophisticated. And so, coming back to the point, we really have to dive deeper into the trenches to understand what is going on. And the regions are different. In the UK, with the EM cycles, we talked about this morning, completely different game plan compared to the rest of the world. You have the 5-year cycles. I mean, a nightmare for every bank to finance a company, right? What is your average EBITDA? Is it up here? Is it down here? It's horrible. I mean, you tell me originally. How you handle that?
I mean, we are a bit different as a development bank because we have a lot more freedom around the length of our loans and also the financial instruments we can deploy for this. So from the deal side, I leave it to the bankers. From the impact side, I try to make the deal happen if it's worthwhile. But I think that's sort of an interesting question, though. The context as well matters, right? Because EBRD is mostly operating in a place where there's not enough water. We're getting some of the too much water problems, but the not enough challenge is really biggest to us. And we're very fortunate that we operate in sort of the full water cycle in many ways, from the household investing in water-saving, water-efficient technologies, plumbing, recycling, whatever it happens to be, all the way up to the sort of 200 million euro massive desal plant level. And I don't know how much time we have. Are we doing on time? Sorry, I'm just like going rogue. Okay. And I think that's an interesting point because it brings up a couple of different topics people discuss. Because that 200 million desal example, I think that's the one case where people might discuss whether or not water is green, where there might be some dispute over water is green, because desalination is super energy intensive. And this example in particular is great. It's lots of renewable energy integrated in, so we say it's green because it's providing water in a super water stressed context in Morocco. But that's also an interesting project from a financing standpoint, because that is a large-scale facility that was funded by a corporate structure, a fertilizer plant in Morocco. And because desalination has great economies of scale, they sort of oversized it and are providing water back to the local municipality, which is an interesting solution because it means we're financing public water through a corporate entity, and that helps the municipality because that's not on their books then, that's not something they're borrowing for. It's a just different financial structure that opens up different ways of financing water. And I'm going to throw some numbers out there because I think numbers are interesting. So we do a lot of the standard leak prevention work as well in the countries we work in. You've gotten leaks down from 50% to 25% in one of our clients in Tajikistan. But I think the really interesting point is how much donor finance is needed to make some of these projects happen, because the ultimate goal is to keep things moving because of that water is life narrative. That's how we can motivate the donors to come into these projects, because access to that water, and there's not enough of it, is a human rights issue, really. So we look at one of our projects in Morocco. Again, Morocco is super water stressed and one of the more innovative countries on this front from our perspective. In Gulmem, Morocco, investing in wastewater treatment and recycling to hydrate green space. And that's a 12 million euro investment, not a huge investment in infrastructure. And it's got a $1 million equivalent grant to support it. So a pretty hefty percentage. And it also involves a guarantee for first loss risk cover. So really throwing out all the tools to get this project through, because it has both that adaptation, that water provision narrative, and it has a green space narrative as well for the nature impact. So it's a real challenge that we need to keep the water flowing. In many countries in Central Asia and South Africa, the water is stopping sometimes. So provision, from our perspective, is first. Where we can bring in the other narratives is where we can motivate donors. And that was, I think, one of the interesting examples of the way we work, because it's an opportunity for donors to provide low additional marginal cost impact. We're already there, we're on the ground, we're doing our environmental due diligence. If we can find an opportunity to enhance something, and there's a donor on board, ready and waiting for something that aligns with opportunities, it's easy to deploy with reduced fixed costs. Just for example of an addition, not donor funded, this one, we're working with a wastewater treatment plant in Kosovo, and there was an opportunity in a nearby area that was not connected to the water infrastructure system to deploy a nature-based solution. Again, small scale in the scheme of things. I think the total loan was 25 million euros. The nature-based solution was less than $1 million. But because we were there and had this impact agenda flagged, we were able to keep that in the transaction and finance it ourselves. So I think there's a lot of emerging technologies, a lot of emerging financing models, but still the perpetual challenge that we're not solely a commercial investor all the time. And so I look to you to how do we make that more commercial?
Yeah, we welcome that for sure. I think the reality is water needs private capital, right? It's not going to be donor. It's not, Superman is not coming to dump tons of money into every municipality, government in the world, nor is some philanthropy going to drop the bucket of money to fix all the infrastructure. So it needs to come from the private sector, and the private sector needs two things, as I think everybody knows. Something simple, easy to understand, something that is not, fictitious in its sort of goals, and something that's actionable. And I think private capital needs to drive that and be a conduit for that acceleration that will bring in other types of capital. But fundamentally, we need private conduits of private capital to come in and accelerate all this. I think that's fundamentally the only way that we can really drive a lot of capital and actually fundamentally solve a lot of the issues in water.
I think we have another problem as well. We have privatized or partially privatized supply side, but a regulated demand side, right? Because our cost per liter water is politically regulated, which is not reflecting the actual cost of the production of the liter water. So now we say, yeah, but hey, wait a minute. Without water, we die. So water is a human right. But is unlimited water a human right? Is pressurized water, hot water, a human right? The way I'm getting is, for investors, I need to see where my return is coming from, right? So that's always the problem. And if you have a deregulated but not matching market, there's always a problem. And if you ask the utilities in the UK, a big problem for them is uncollectible receivables. Because if someone is not paying their water bill, you can't turn off the water supply. He's dead in 3 days. You cannot turn off the electricity. He survives, not with water.
On that point, I think, we saw that this morning, is you need the supply and demand to be talking to each other, right? You need the private sector to be speaking to the regulator, to be speaking to the philanthropist, to be speaking to everybody. And I think that came across this morning when you had the regulator from Louisiana speaking to the utility from Louisiana, when they both speak the same language and they have the same goal, that good things can happen to both people. But you need fundamentally that to be sort of on the same page. You can't have the regulator saying one thing and the utility saying something else, because you're going to be at a constant mismatch. But when those opportunities do happen where they're communicating and they recognize that if we work together, everybody can win, because the market fundamentally is so massively inefficient that there's enough for everybody to win, that's, I think, where the collaboration needs to come into play, which I think is your point. We can't be working in silos, right? The regulator can't be working in a silo. The EBRD cannot be working in a silo, or the venture capitalists can't be working in a silo. And I think that's what we really need to work on in the water space, is the collaboration there.
Yeah. But I think on top of that, the regulator themselves needs to be at least perceived to be reasonably free of political influence.
Right.
Which is not always the case.
Correct.
It's interesting you say about the first job is not to lose your job. I did a survey looking at financiers' perception of risk, and the first thing was reputational risk. They would almost rather lose money than make headlines in the papers.
I mean, if you're, it's not my money, it's the city's money. I don't, so the startup probably is better, cheaper, faster, but we're just going to go with the big old one because I don't want to get, no one ever got fired for buying IBM kind of thing. Like, so I think for startups in the drinking water utility space, brutal. Because you're going and pitching something like, we're cheaper, better, faster. And the operator's like, yeah, we're just going to go with this big one we know. And so then as an investor, like, why would we put our money in something where it's just like head against the wall kind of thing? Some bright spots within the space as a VC, from our perspective, are at the Venn intersect of biotech and water. And you say biotech, people sit up in their chairs a little straighter. Very bullish on sensing and monitoring technologies, lab-in-a-chip kind of stuff, biosensing, even eDNA, eRNA. Where there's water, there's life. Maybe not in chlorinated water, but like a lot of water around the world has something living in it. It might be microscopic, it might be something you can see. Anywhere there's living something, it's got a DNA fingerprint. And you hear DNA and you think biotech, you're thinking human health, but leveraging the biotech toolbox to come into water and see and understand what's living there, I think is one of the most compelling investment opportunities in the next 5-10 years. Another area that we're very bullish on is something called synthetic data. So putting sensors everywhere is expensive and they need to be calibrated and maintained. So if you don't have the data on X, Y, and Z asset, you can synthetically generate it that mirrors the real data. Now, for compliance reasons, you need the real data. But for modeling purposes and training algorithms, you can create a massive data set that has less bias, more edge, and that synthetically generated data set trains the algorithm to see nuances and tiny little subtle changes in quality and quantity to be able to say something happened today that the real data's training set wouldn't be helpful with. So there's some nerdy kind of propeller head data science nerds out there who don't know anything about water, but they know data. And I think as a VC, putting money into those plays becomes a very compelling investment opportunity to get in and then exit to big corporates that are looking for. Sensors will always matter. But if you can't put a sensor everywhere, then you need to figure out how to do soft sensing or synthetically generate data on X, Y, and Z asset to see what's going on. So there's a biotech, and I say biotech and data, and people are like, I thought you were working in water. Why are you working in tech? It confuses people. But from a VC perspective, we have to find sort of these startups that are reimagining how you understand contamination in water and how you understand trends and probability and category of risk, which gets to algorithmic thinking, which gets back to data, which gets back to synthetically generated. So there are two bright spots. And for investors who are like, you can't make your money in water, look over our shoulder at some of these early stage companies because there's tons of opportunity within those realms.
I'm going to come to you for questions in a minute, so start getting your questions ready. So, Alex, what's your favorite project?
Rethinking water, no. Putting the wonderful conference together here in London. It's a tough question. I think just being in the water industry is a project in itself, right? As our founder and CEO mentioned about an hour ago, we've been in this space for 10 years. It's an incredible journey because I think it's one that's going to last 20 to 30 years, right? So I think overall, just being in the water sector and engaging more and more people in the water sector, whether they're investors, whether it's producing fantastic returns across the various opportunities. And I would say water and wastewater. I love to always talk about wastewater. And also engaging different constituents in it because there's a lot more to do in the water space. So I can't say one project. I think just bringing together and creating a conduit of capital for that to happen and be impactful is the project in itself. So.
There's another bright spot in water, which is athletes in water. It's going to sound a little esoteric, whatever. I know it's like, well, that's not funny because people are dying from like scarcity or whatever, but there's a trend going amongst NBA, NFL, Premier League about drinking better water. So this water certainly is safe and it's fine, hydrates you. But what if you could have better water, functional water, precision water that helps you hit the playing field with more energy? What if you could? So there's companies out there that are working on, so that's not really the water industry anymore, that's like performance and nutrition and human health. And then from the athletes, it gets into like wellness and health. And you wake up in the morning and you drink a water and you're like, I don't need coffee anymore because I have tons of energy because of this functional water. So that's like, for money, that becomes like a way more compelling place. And then eventually that percolates down to people who are in like refugee camps. Instead of just drinking water, how about drinking water that hydrates them even more? And so hopefully it will make its way down to those most in need. So those are some bright spots in the space that I think checkbooks should be paying attention to.
Yeah.
I think we
as
have
long as you're not selling alkaline water with a slice of lemon. That's
alkaline water, or pH adjusted alkaline water with a slice of lemon. I mean, it's already been happening for a long time. But I think we're at an inflection point. In the next 5 years, you're going to start to see precision water becoming something of a thing.
I think we have a breakout session after this on water's not just water.
Okay, there you go. Quick advert. Okay, so questions. They're going to take the lights up so I can see you because at the moment I can't see you because it's too bright. There we go. Okay, good. And over here, thank you.
Hi, I've been in water investing for some time as well. I would support what John was saying about, how do you, find what's making money. So when I talk to corporates, when they try to justify the investment in either water reuse or something like that, they actually save energy or chemicals, and that's how they can justify it. So not because the water cost is nothing. So from their perspective, that's one of the method they use to consider water. So the question I have is, I guess, to all the panel. So somebody earlier today said we need to compare ourselves to, I think it's actually John said that, to AI, right, in terms of returns. And my question is, doesn't that sound crazy? Because, AI investment today, at the valuation that it is, it reminds me of a dot-com, internet, where there's a lot of corrections going to come in. So yes, returns expectations are high, but the risk is very high as well. And to me, it feels like water is a very different, well, if you look at the water metering company, how can you compare the multiples? It's just nuts. So when you go to investors to raise funds and they say, oh, we need to make the same money as AI, I mean, is that really real? So that's the question.
Can I start with the answer here? Water metering company, perfect example. If you look at metering companies across the world, you will identify Badgermeter as the best evaluated listed company in the metering space at the moment. Talking about close to 20 times EBITDA. If you compare that to all the other metering companies who are not trading at a similar level, much lower, the differentiation is Badgermeter is 100% dedicated to water. All the other metering companies, Landis & Gear, made a public announcement earlier this year about it, are looking to invest into the water space. So I would even question that other metering companies should go into the water space because there the need for metering is underpenetrated compared to other end markets. So there you have much more room to grow because if you look at district heating, if you look at electricity, the metering market, AMI is much more advanced already.
The closest water can get to that is precipitation forecasting. That the whole business there is data, modeling. And we're like, what does rain have to do with water? But it's not traditionally included in water industry because it's weather. But I think if you hang out with guys in meteorology and weather, you realize like there's AI-able plays in precipitation, including snowpack. That is a very AI-able, nerdy field where there's like tons of money to be made in precipitation forecasting in the next couple of decades. And that whole business is algorithms. And really complicated ones. So the nerdiest people in the world, I feel like, are working on meteorology. That's like, for your AI, like precipitation forecasting. That's really, I'm very bullish on that in the next decade.
Okay. Yeah, sorry.
Hello. Two main points of this talk have been around operators, which we were talking about earlier on with the grey wave, but also importantly, intersection of water industry with other industries. So John was talking about earlier on. Do you think the water has the money, the clout, can be attractive enough to both attract young people into operator jobs, which are maybe have more aspiration than just to keep the job, or as well be able to attract people from biotechs and other industries that traditionally have paid more exciting, more attractive, and generally, to many, more interesting than the water sector? And how would you solve that?
Okay, hold on just a second, because I'm going to take a second one at the same time. We'll do them together, because there's a gentleman just there. Okay.
Thank you for the presentation. Nicholas Chow, University of Oxford. I wanted to ask about valuation. We are evaluating the value of water, these water projects, but as you mentioned, between you, you come from different perspectives. And one of the most common things that I see is a misalignment in how we value water and how we value the assets, how we value them over time. So the question I wanted to ask is if you can talk a little bit about what kind of timelines, what kind of IRRs, and in particular, what kind of discount rates you use, and whether those you see those changing in the future.
Okay, so two very different questions, but so pick whichever one you fancy first.
Well, the two I can answer certainly both, but the first one, I think there is no better sector to enter right now than water, right? We hear a lot about AI, and if you want to be in a sector that's going to be here for 30 years and you're sort of a young entrepreneur or a young sort of technical person, you want to be where there's going to be growth for 30 years. Now, to your point, I don't think that growth is going to happen in the radical exponential way that AI is going to happen over a year or two. It's going to be a long, steady growth over the next 30 years. But the water sector has the clout, and hopefully will have the ability to educate people to bring them into this sector. That's a fundamental problem, is bringing in the young. You know, we heard about the silver tsunami, bringing in that younger generation to come and be in that sector, because it will be there for 30 years, and there is fundamentally no better place to be than in the water sector. And it needs to be rebranded as such. So to answer your question, yes, I do think the water sector is the perfect place for that, and it does have the clout and the capital and the resources and the education to welcome that. If you want, do you want to take the second?
On the branding of water, I think it does have a brand problem. It's a bit too mundane. We all sort of take it for granted. There's water, it gets here. It's not exciting. If you look at how renewable energy evolved, that's such an exciting, glamorous field, right? New technologies, like frontier space. And we've just heard already, this is happening in water, you know, biofilms on wastewater. There's really cool stuff happening. And it's just happening invisibly from the perspective of the people who are getting water in their house. So I don't know what the solution to that is, honestly. Maybe we need some, you know, big glamour projects, more outreach, more excitement about the technology of water, get the coding team on these AI solutions and make them just a little bit more visible of all the cool stuff that actually goes into this, you know, glass of plain water.
I think the beauty about the water space is also that you have so many different buckets. I mean, best example here, you can be in the finance world. You can come to Raymond James, work 120 hours a week, or you can go as an engineer, or work as an operator and spend more time with the kids, right? Really, it depends on your preferences, and if you want to be an engineer, if you want to be in the marketing, if you want to be in the financing side, offers it everything. The other question, I think, was about evaluation. I love the question about evaluation, obviously. So we can dive into cost of equity, cost of debt, depending on inflation. What is the inflation going forward? Nobody knows. It also depends, and we are again on a way too high level, is it an infrastructure investment which requires much lower return rates, so the discount rate is much lower, right? Is it a startup investment where the risk profile is much higher, so your discount rate goes through the roof? There's not a one formula for the water space. I can tell you most of our discount rates are between, I would say, 8 to 12% WACC, where we are talking about the middle market. What is the middle market? It's again around this 100 million enterprise value up to, I would say, 500 million, to give you ballpark figures. There are 1,000 KPIs you need to take into consideration. You're a PhD, you know more better than me. We can talk about beta regression, justifications, as a t-test, you name it. So very happy after the course to talk about that.
I've got something to add on top of that. So what are we talking about here? Adding a zero to valuation. I mean, your company's worth 20 million or 200 million, add a zero to the valuation? Yeah. We have 3 companies in our fund one. One's leak detection and properties, prop tech, add a zero. Another one's testing and monitoring of water to home, health tech. And the third one was helping banks understand their loans to farmers. Farmers have problems with water. So it's fintech, because it's a bank, and it gives them a decision support software to make a loan or not to the farmer. So you don't have enough water, or you, like, the well's dry. Like, fintech, health tech, prop tech, add a zero to the valuation. I know that sounds like I'm making it, like, oversimplifying things, but if you want to add a zero to the valuation, reframe it. And it's like, well, it's not as easy as that. It's like, yes and no. Framing matters. I mean, that's like you get the communications and PR and marketing guys, like they're sitting up here, and they'll help you add a zero to evaluation. So I think it's one thing that's missing in this industry is like PR, marketing, comms people coming in and figuring out how to repackage things to get people to sit up in their chairs straighter and reach for their checkbooks. I mean, the under the sink solution we have in my home is health tech. And that's how my wife and I think of it. This is the health of our children. This isn't the water industry, this isn't water filter. This is a health technology in our kitchen. And we'll, if 400 pounds, 800 pounds, 900 pounds, doesn't matter, it's health. It's our children's health. So we will pay an extra zero for that thing because it's health. Add a zero to the valuation. If you say it's your water technology, chop a zero off. I'm sorry to be so like cynical about it.
I completely agree, and we haven't done this financially speaking because we've got our own issues there. But in the terms of the narrative and the selling it and the impact of things, we just last week agreed to finance a pipe manufacturing company in Uzbekistan. They make water pipes, but it's resilience technology, because they're the only producer of insulated water pipes in Central Asia, and that's going to provide much improved leak reduction through the region that's super water stressed. So it's not water, it's not a pipe, it's resilience technology.
And having said that, I want to resurrect the reputation of water here again. To give another example, I helped an investor earlier this year to acquire a company that is focused on dewatering services for construction sites, going into an IC with the words, I have an opportunity in construction services, you can stop right there. If you go into an IC and say, I have a water treatment specialist that happens to start in the infrastructure construction environment, keep going, right? So I think, again, it matters from where you're coming from. You can add a zero if you reposition it from construction to water.
Sure.
Just to keep water.
Thank you. It's right up the top there.
Is it on? Oh, yeah. My name is Belanda Lanji. I'm from the University of Cambridge. And my question kind of ties into the first panel that we had. We had Aaron Silas from CSWR, and he kind of mentioned something that kind of struck me, was that some of the water utilities the smaller water utilities that they invested in would serve maybe 5 people, but it would cost similar to the larger water utilities. And so I was just wondering, how do you justify this to your investors? Where are you going to get the returns from? Like, from the 5 people, how do you price the water?
Yeah, I'll take that. I think the reality is you have to spread it out. I mean, you need scale, right? And I think the Commissioner Scarmetti talked about it, is you need to improve the denominator, right? So you want a community that serves 5 people, you need to blend that with a community that serves 1,000 people and blend it together, which is where you need scale. And I think that's one of the key things that has to happen right now in this sector. In general, you need to get to scale. There's way too many companies that are subscale. But once you do get to scale, you're able to solve and CSWR has done a great job of blending the 5 with the 500 and 1,000. And I think he did use that example. Most of them are not for 5 people because obviously that's economically unviable. But only through scale and efficiency and consolidation do you actually get there. In general, and I think that can be applied to anything we talk about in water, fintech, health tech, what have you, is scale and rationalization is the only way to do it.
And I think that is something we should also appreciate, because building these platforms where you add more and more to the platform, and through that you increase professionalism, you increase efficiency, you reduce the cost base, increasing standards. I mean, without that consolidation which is predominantly driven by private equity investors, a lot of these companies would die. And you can find that in a lot of sub-niches in the water industry.
Exactly.
Okay, gentleman there, thank you.
Hi, thank you. My name is Marios. I'm a hydroinformatics researcher, so one of the nerds you mentioned. I also own a small consultancy operating between here and Cyprus. Right now I'm trying to convince my partners to go into the water sector. And one of the things I mentioned was water metrics and water scales, right? One of the most promising sectors within water. But then another thing derived bottom up is local at a small extension scale water infrastructure. So for example, I own a hotel. I don't really trust the local infrastructure to process my wastewater, so I invest in my own infrastructure and I process the water, and maybe on the way I just pump some energy from biogas production, or same argument with desalination. So my question is, considering what you just said also about scale, how does the VC world view this kind of maybe privately owned, maybe publicly owned, but my point is small scale, local water infrastructure, how do you see it in terms of return of investment, profitability, so on and so forth?
You don't. Oh, sorry.
I think the key is scale, right? I think decentralization is obviously a very big theme, right? Whether it's a hotel or a small municipality, you need scale and you need rationalization. I think that needs to happen in the water space for everybody to win, whether it's a more scalable solution that helps you finance your decentralized system in your hotel. But I think we need to consolidate and bring a lot of these smaller solutions and smaller players together. Otherwise, it just won't work economically for anybody. I think that's how certainly lower middle market private equity thinks about it. Your question was more on the venture side. I don't know. Scale is important.
We'll let other venture capital funds focus on drinking water. We'll stay out of the way. It's tough. I don't know. Yeah, there's not really a good answer to that.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, hold on. Because there's people online, so they need to be able to hear you.
Hi, everyone. So today we heard a lot about opportunity, and I think you're all capitalists. So we believe in some sort of market efficiency. Then why is money not flowing if there's great opportunity? And what needs to change? I know there's been a little bit of touch on it, but what really needs to change so that the powers of the market would be unleashed and money would flow?
Which water? People said the water crisis. There's multiple different verticals here. And the problem is that people say water is just water, and no one invests in water. Like, we're investing in flooding. Is that the water industry? One of our next deals is in tidal current forecasting. Tides. Is that the water industry? Is leak detection in this property the water industry? So it depends how you slice and dice it. If you just say the water crisis, you're going to get lost. And of course, that's too broad. It's like health or something. It's just too broad. So I think once you get closer to water, you start to see subtle trends and nuances about where and how you can participate as an investor, and you can develop your own thesis, and you can do really well. One of our portfolio companies is using flow monitoring to understand normal, abnormal behavior in senior living, old people. My mom lives in a building. Her water use is a really good indicator of her health. So if it's noon and she hasn't flushed the toilet yet, maybe she didn't get out of bed, maybe she died. If she's been in the shower for 2 hours, something happened. So it hasn't done the dishwasher, hasn't run the dishes in 2 weeks. I mean, you laugh, but like, water is a really good indicator of health. And if you're senior, you opt into this thing where it's like, so that's not really the water industry anymore, that's water as a proxy for health of senior citizens. Where do I sign up for that? Like the senior, like with the baby boomers and the senior living, that's a really lucrative business. You just have to see that by getting closer. They just say water crisis, you got to get into these little niches within water, and then you see the dollar signs.
I think it's a very simple answer. The reality is water is flowing. I mean, capital is flowing into the water sector. I mean, we've created a multi-billion-dollar franchise. Raymond James is done more deals in the water space than I think anybody over the last 10 years. The capitalists are there. The reality is you need more of it to flow into this because the demand is so big, the need is so big, and the regulator, the government, the philanthropy isn't filling the void. So nobody here is advocating that there isn't money, capital flowing. We just need more of it, and we need more of it to flow, I think, in the lower middle market than anywhere else, because that's what's going to solve and spur everything else, is sort of our point of view.
I mean, I can tell you, every single day I get calls from investors telling me, Florian, find me a water company. I want to invest into water. I don't see a lack of willingness to invest into water. I rather see the other way around. I have to tell them, look, there are not enough companies to invest in. I think we have the problem that not enough companies are coming up into the water space. And I think there we start about education, about how great the water industry is, to incentivize more the young and bright next generations to come into the water space and contribute with their ideas.
I think also the readiness for private capital, right? The financial situation might be sound, but that particular local water utility has never sought private investment before for whatever reason. So part of EBRD's role is to sort of matchmake and get them market ready, so to speak. That they're a conventional water utility, they are good, solid financials because they're a regulated industry, they've got their money flowing in, but want to undertake a project, need to get capital into it, and just haven't ever prepared a project like that before. So we can help, that's some part of the gap we can help fill.
Okay, I'm afraid time has run out on us. So Rachel, Florian, Alex, John, you've been a splendid panel. Thank